Welcome to a journey through one of the most significant case laws in American history, Tennessee v. Gardner. This landmark case provides a crucial lens through which we can examine the use of deadly force by law enforcement. Picture the United States in the late 20th century, a time of social unrest and rapid change. Amid this backdrop, a tragic event unfolded that would forever change the landscape of American law enforcement. The Tennessee v. Gardner case arose from these circumstances, and its reverberations are still felt today. The essence of the case rests on a critical question: when, if ever, is it acceptable for law enforcement to use deadly force? The implications of this question are far-reaching, affecting not only those who wear the badge, but also every individual who calls America home. Now let's delve into the events that led to this landmark case. The year was 1974, in the city of Memphis, Tennessee. A night like any other, or so it seemed, until a particular incident left an indelible mark on the annals of American law enforcement history. This story revolves around Edward Garner, a 15-year-old boy with no weapon to his name. On that fateful night, young Edward found himself in a precarious situation. He was involved in a burglary, a crime that would ordinarily be met with a stern reprimand and a lesson in justice. But this night was anything but ordinary. Edward was spotted by a police officer who, in the heat of the moment and the pursuit of justice, made a decision that would echo through the halls of the American justice system for decades to come. The officer, upon seeing Edward trying to scale a fence to escape, chose to use his firearm. The crucial detail to remember here is that Edward was unarmed. He was a 15-year-old boy, caught in the act of a crime, yes, but a threat to life. That's a question that would soon be asked by many. In his attempt to halt Edward's escape, the police officer fired his weapon, a decision that tragically ended Edward's life. This was a boy, barely old enough to drive, suddenly gone, the victim of a fatal gunshot delivered by an officer of the law. This incident, as heartbreaking as it was, did not stop at the crime scene. It ignited a spark that led to a legal battle of significant proportions, a battle that thrust the use of force by law enforcement into the national spotlight, prompting debates and discussions that still resonate to this day. So as we delve deeper into the story of Tennessee v. Gardner, remember the faceless name at the heart of it all: Edward Garner, a 15-year-old boy whose untimely end sparked a conversation that changed the course of American law enforcement. This tragic event led to a legal battle that would reach the Supreme Court, reshaping the use of force guidelines for law enforcement. The case was not straightforward, sparking a fierce legal debate. In the aftermath of the tragic incident, Edward Garner's father took legal action, asserting that the use of deadly force against his son was unconstitutional. This claim was not without basis. After all, young Garner was unarmed and posed no immediate threat to anyone. This legal battle was not confined to a local or state court. The gravity of the case caught national attention, ultimately making its way to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. The case presented at the Supreme Court was not just about Garner. It revolved around the broader question of whether the Tennessee statute, allowing the use of deadly force against a fleeing suspect, was in violation of the Fourth Amendment. For those unfamiliar, the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution protects citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. It requires law enforcement to have a warrant or probable cause before conducting a search or making an arrest. In this case, the argument was that the shooting of Garner, a fleeing suspect, was an unreasonable seizure. The state of Tennessee, however, maintained that the statute was necessary to maintain order and deter crime. It was a tension between the rights of the individual and the power of the state, a classic debate that has shaped the history of American jurisprudence. The Supreme Court was faced with a decision that had far-reaching implications. It wasn't just about deciding if a particular law was constitutional or not. Rather, it was about defining the boundaries of law enforcement power and the rights of citizens in the face of that power. The question before the court was complex. Where does the line lie between maintaining law and order and protecting the rights of individuals? And more specifically, When, if ever, is the use of deadly force against a fleeing suspect justified? The Supreme Court's decision would not only determine the outcome of this particular case, but it would also set a precedent that still impacts law enforcement today. The Supreme Court's decision would set a precedent that still impacts law enforcement today. The Supreme Court's decision in Tennessee v. Gardner is one that still reverberates today. This landmark ruling in 1985 sparked a paradigm shift in the law enforcement community. The highest court in the land ruled that using deadly force to prevent the escape of an unarmed suspect constituted an unreasonable seizure under the Fourth Amendment. The decision was not arrived at lightly. The Supreme Court carefully deliberated over the case, examining the circumstances surrounding the tragic incident. The key question at hand was whether the use of deadly force to prevent the escape of a suspect was constitutionally acceptable. After much consideration, the court ruled in favor of the plaintiff, Edward Garner's father. They found that the use of deadly force against an unarmed suspect was indeed an unreasonable seizure under the Fourth Amendment. The court held that unless the officer has probable cause to believe the suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or others, it is unconstitutional to use deadly force to prevent escape. The Supreme Court's decision was a striking departure from the common law rule that a law enforcement officer may use any necessary force to effect an arrest. The court noted that this antiquated rule was out of step with contemporary standards, which place a high value on human life and dignity. This decision underscored the importance of the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizures and emphasized the need for law enforcement to consider the nature of the suspected crime, the threat to the officer, and the threat to the community before resorting to deadly force. In essence, the court's ruling in Tennessee v. Gardner underscored the principle that a police officer's authority to use deadly force is inherently limited by the Constitution. It is not an unfettered right, but one that must be exercised judiciously, and only when there is a clear and present danger to the officer or the public. This ruling set a new standard for law enforcement across the nation. The decision in Tennessee v. Gardner has had a profound impact on law enforcement. The ripples of this landmark case have been felt far beyond the borders of Tennessee, reshaping the face of law enforcement across the United States. It has become a beacon guiding the principles of police training and protocols, helping to define the fine line between necessary force and excessive force. In the wake of Tennessee v. Gardner, police departments nationwide took a hard look at their training programs. The ruling emphasized the value of every life, even those suspected of criminal activity. It underscored the idea that the use of deadly force should be a last resort, not a first response. Police departments responded by introducing new rules and regulations to ensure that officers understood the gravity and consequences of their actions. Training programs began to focus more on de-escalation techniques and less lethal means of control. But the impact didn't stop there. The decision set a new standard for evaluating the legality of police use of force. The objective reasonableness standard, as it came to be known, has been referenced time and time again in subsequent cases. It's a standard that asks, what would a reasonable officer have done in the same situation? This question has become a staple in courtrooms across America when dealing with cases of alleged police brutality or misconduct. Notably, Tennessee v. Gardner also opened up a wider conversation about police accountability and the need for transparency in law enforcement. It sparked a national debate that continues to this day, fueling discussions about body cameras, civilian review boards, and other mechanisms of oversight. Tennessee v. Gardner remains a cornerstone of American case law, forever changing how law enforcement interacts with the public. It serves as a constant reminder to law enforcement agencies that the power they wield must be used judiciously and with respect for the sanctity of human life. It's a case that continues to resonate, echoing through the halls of justice and the streets of our cities, shaping the future of law enforcement in America. Tennessee v. Gardner, a landmark case that continues to shape the landscape of American law enforcement, This case is more than just a story of a tragic incident. It's the embodiment of the ongoing struggle to balance the rights of individuals against the needs of law enforcement. From the incident that sparked the legal battle, to the Supreme Court decision that redefined use of force guidelines, every aspect of this case has had an indelible impact on law enforcement policies and practices. The Supreme Court decision in this case established a crucial precedent, setting forth the reasonableness standard for use of force. It emphasized that the sanctity of human life must always be at the forefront of any police action. The ripple effects of Tennessee v. Gardner continue to be felt today, as we grapple with issues of police conduct, use of force, and the rights of individuals. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Tennessee v. Gardner, a case that continues to resonate in our society's ongoing discussion of law enforcement and use of force.